Hi, can you hear me?
Hi, how are you? Hi. Hi, Nitin.
Hi, Kirti, how are you?
I'm very good. How are you?
Very well, Kirti. Thank you.
Hi guys, so Rohit here. We are live streaming right now onto YouTube. So we'll start at 2 o'clock.
Right.
Sure.
Good afternoon, guys. Hi, Keerti. Hi, Nitin. Hi, Sanah. Thank you for joining us for this panel discussion on sustainable food and fashion from a research perspective. Before we get into the panel discussion, I would want to thank each one of you for getting the time out to be available here and share your experiences with us. We will now present a short video from our sponsors, and then we will go ahead with the panel discussion.
Sure.
I think there was some issues. So, so that was from our sponsors, and thank you everyone who is watching us live on IITMA YouTube channel. We have Nitin, Keerti, and Sanah with us for the panel discussion on the sustainable food and fashion. I am your moderator. I am Rohit Junjunwala. I am the Research Affairs Secretary at IIT Madras, and I will be moderating this panel discussion. So before we get into the panel discussion, I would give you a brief introduction about each one of our speakers here. I will start with Nitin. So Nitin is the co-founder and chief tasting officer at Coco Trade. And Coco Trade is the world's first zero waste bean to bar chocolate company. He's done his masters in retail management, and he has worked previously with Godrej Nature's Basket, which is a premium grocery chain, and he's also India's first certified chocolate taster. So thank you, Nitin, for joining us today. Our other panelist is Keerti. So Keerti leads the Okhai's efforts towards empowerment and I'm reading it out here. So empowerment and protecting ancient craft. In 2015, she started with 350 women in Gujarat, and today Okhai has impacted 24,000 women artisans across the country. In this period, Okhai's revenues was improved or increased to 10 times. And as a part of Tata Administrative Services, she has worked across industries and six of different Tata companies. Keerti was recently added to the list of top 130 women transforming India by Niti Aayog. So, Niti, it's a pleasure to have you here, and thank you for joining us. So, our final finalist is Sanah. Sanah, she is a fashion designer with expertise in sustainability and closed loop system. In 2014, Sanah created her own technique of cutting called planar flux, and then subsequently launched her eponymous clothing line in 2018 to implement and execute her without a box concepts. An amalgamation of science and design, the two fundamentals that exist in all existence. Sanah's planar flux is backed by years of research and development. At the age of 24, she published her research academically with a well known scientific publishing house, Springer. Her clothing lines work to craft high fashion luxury garments as well as affordable upcycled clothing. With features in distinguished media channels like WWD, Fashion United, Conscious Chatter, The Hindu, and Grazi India, Sanah is breaking myths associated with sustainable fashion in the global conversation. The Sanah Sharma line of clothing is also a registered initiative, part of the UN's Sustainable Development Goals platform. So thank you for joining us today, Sanah.
My pleasure. Thanks.
Yeah. So we'll start with the panel discussion with a brief introduction about all of you guys' journey about developing a brand in sustainable area. So was it so in brief 2 to 3 minutes, if you can explain me your journey, and was it a conscious choice for you guys to start a sustainable brand, or did it just evolve over a period of time? So Sanah, can you start, and then we will take up with Keerti and then Nitin.
Sure. So to answer your question, actually, I didn't begin my research as, to like sort of solve sustainability issues within the industry. I was looking to create innovative methods of making clothes because I was still in college. I was in my final year, and I was just really bored of the way that we were making clothes. I just felt like we were doing them the same way since the medieval times. And I didn't want to just be another designer making clothes the same way. So my research started off as how, what else can we do? What are the other ways that we can make garments? And while I was doing that research, I found out that there was this huge gap, and there was this huge issue of, unsustainable practices that were impacting our world in a very, very strong way. So from just looking at innovation, now my research was at a path where I was looking at innovation for sustainability. And that's how I created my own technique, which is based on a principle in math. It's a theory in math and science. It's called the Mobius strip. I'm sure that a lot of you are aware of it. So yeah, it works on those principles, and it's applied to the foundations of garment making, and it helps to reduce the consumption of fabric, and it is also a zero waste technique. So typically in the fashion business, we have something like 12 to 15% of wastage, which is a huge amount. Uh, so this completely eliminates that, and we have a zero waste system. So we also do, we do recycling fabrics. We also we do upcycling as well. So it's now like more like a closed loop system, and it's an ongoing research. So for me, planar flux was like an initial step, and now we have a lot of things, like we do something called human kinetics, where we test the garments for human movement, right? We're making clothes for human beings, so it's not just going to be on a mannequin. So can you move in it? Can you sit in it? Can you dance in it? So these are things that we test in a virtual environment, and then physically as well, before the design is released.
Thank you, Sanah, for that. So, Keerti, can you tell us your experience with Okhai and how has it evolved and your journey with it? Keerti, you're on mute right now.
Great. So ever since I was a little girl, maybe around 13, I wanted to become a designer when I would grow up. My mother is a fashion designer as well. She did her design when I was still in school. So I helped her with her homework and was homeschooled in fashion. And so whatever she would do, I would understand the cuts and scenes and everything. But like all good Indian kids, when I grew up, I became a software engineer. Um, Almost like basic education in our country, right? I started working in tech for about 4 years. I was working there, and I moved on to business, and I was onto a very corporate path. And I think in 2015, it so happened that Okai was not doing too well. I was like one of those, non-profit organizations that has some products, is trying to raise funds through selling those products, but the products are not good enough, which ends up not creating a certain impact. So if in a social business, you're going to donate 1 lakh of rupees to 10 women, you can either donate it to them and they're all going to get 10,000 rupees each, or you can create a whole sustainable fashion business and you can pay designers and technology and raw materials, and they're going to get 100 rupees each. So the idea was that we should create a social business that creates a lot more impact, either in the short run or a slightly longer run, for the women who generate or start their own businesses, right? So I traveled to the villages to look at it for a really short while. I volunteered almost to do a 3-month evaluation of the company. And when I traveled to the villages and I saw what these women were making and what they were capable of, I realized that this is what I wanted to do when I was 13, and I was finally getting the chance to do it. So I made a business plan, which was so similar to all my ideas when I was a kid. And now I was this adult presenting the same ideas to the board of Okai. And I think instantly everyone was like, why don't you take it up? And I had a very, ambitious corporate path. And I didn't even blink for a second. And I said, okay, I'll do it. And I think in the first 1 year, we grew by 50%. And every year we grew another 50 to 60%. Last year, we've grown by 60%. And now we're almost 10 times the revenue that we were 5 years ago. If you look at revenue terms, we will be the largest such organization in the country selling online right now. So from nothing to something is our story. And it's just a full circle personally for me, because this is what I always wanted to do. And it is a full circle for the organization, because it has gone from just about 300 women to 24,000 women. And during the pandemic, we did not have to raise any funds for them to have a livelihood or food, because they had savings for the last 4 years of working at Okai. And not even a single person had to dig into their savings. So I think that is, what really keeps us going and motivated.
Sorry, we had a disruption there, but I think, did you guys feel that disruption, or was it just me?
Not me.
All right, cool. So thank you, Keerti, for that. It was a pleasure understanding your experience with Okai and how you have built it up. Nitin, can you just now explain to us your journey with Coco Trade? And I understand it did not start what it is currently today. It has evolved a period of time. So can you just tell us your journey about that?
Sure. Thanks a lot, Rohit, first of all, for this opportunity. And it's absolute pleasure to be in the company of Keerti and Sanah. Obviously, achieving a lot more than we've probably achieved in the food space, but it's very inspiring. I must start with that, but our journey has been quite diverse. I find a lot of interest in talking about my story, and I'll obviously keep it short to 2 minutes, though it's a very long one, because like a lot of people in the chocolate industry world over, we do not have a chocolate background. In fact, we don't even have a culinary background. So for instance, I'm a business student. I've done my master's in retail business management from UK, and obviously has nothing to do with chocolate. But the way it flowed into chocolate for us was soon after the MS, when I returned back to the country, which is 2005, I got hired by a consulting company, which then got hired by Godrej, Mr. R.D. Godrej himself, for an initiative that they were starting off at that point of time. And I'm talking about 2005, where organized retailing was not really spoken about too much. The big corporates were talking about it in the boardrooms, but we had an opportunity from Mr. Godrej to say, listen, while you conceive an idea about what should our roadmap be for the next 20 years in India, can you also have a team help us implement it? So we did a consulting project. We helped them implement the entire project. And as a result of that, we have a store chain called Godrej Nature's Basket, which recently got sold out. But I'm talking about 2005, and we were really setting it up. So in that process, there was a little bit of exposure towards fine chocolate, and the fact that chocolate can be made in small scale, and it need not be an industrial process or a bulk process. And there are huge differentiators that are possible. So one thing led to the other. We set up a couple of stores, and then I moved away from the project because our project was limited to 3 stores opening. And then I joined an IT company because I believe that though I'm not a software engineer, there was a lot of contribution that has to be done from the business side. And a company called Cognizant, hired us. And I didn't know that I'm going to be living in the US for the next 3 years. And I got hired by them in India. So I moved to the US for 3 years, and again, kept connected with chocolate very easily because traveling is easy there. A lot of exposure to fine foods exist. So in that process, kept connected. But I think the eureka moment, right, for me was when I came back to India, and I decided I want to quit my corporate life and do something which I really want to do myself without really knowing what it was. I did a backpacking trip to Belgium for about 20 days, and I met a gentleman who's now my mentor called Martin Christie in the UK, and he was starting out a chocolate tasting course. So I realized, being in Cognizant, there was a lot of reverse engineering that happens in software. So I decided I want to follow the path and reverse engineer into chocolate. So the first thing was to obviously understand the final product, which I did. The course really helped a lot. And that happens to make me the first certified chocolate taster in the country. And I did this in 2014 in the UK. And after which we developed our skills backwards. And we decided we'll need to dive into understanding how chocolate is made at small scale. And then we now have a chocolate brand of our own. But answering your question, the chocolate brand did not start out being sustainable, but we take part in a chocolate show in Amsterdam every year. Annually, it happens in February, where in 2018, we realized that the need of the hour really, where everybody was talking in every panel discussion or a presentation, was about sustainability in chocolate. So we said we have 1 year's time. In 2019, we got back to Chocoa and we presented to the world what the world's first zero waste and sustainable chocolate will look like. And of course, the 1 year has been a great effort where we've not used paper or plastic anywhere in the packaging or in the production of chocolate. And I think that's how our journey, kind of detoured into becoming sustainable. But having said that, no regrets. I think we've been forced into the right direction.
Thank you, Nitin, for that journey. So I have the one question for Sanah, and then we'll throw it open, the same question to the others. Sanah, you were mentioning about the research, and based on your research and the Mobius strip, you have started a company, like your fashion designing, and a lot of your brand is defined by your research, right, as such. So how difficult is it to start a research-based, enterprise or a startup, and what are the issues that you might face doing that?
I think when I started my research, I actually didn't have the business aspect of it, thought out. I was just doing my research to create something that I believed in and something that I was passionate to find an answer to. And when you do a research, there are usually, you have multiple paths, multiple trajectories, multiple agendas to a research. So you have one where you're proving an existing theory, and another is a more innovation and development oriented research. So those are usually the ones that are a good fit for a business. So I knew that there was a problem that I was solving with the work I was doing. And so that gave me, the impetus to work this out, to instead of just having it in the books as a research paper, it's not really going to create an impact until I really put it out in the world. So I started understanding what was the scope for this body of work that I had. And I was at the same time being mentored by a professor at the Royal College of Arts in London. And so that gave me a little bit of insight as to what is the worldview on this. and to channel out how do you convert a research-based concept into a business. So there are broadly three things you should keep in mind. The first being that, is it solving a problem? The second is, what is the scope of growth? And by growth, I don't mean the scale of your business. I'm saying the scale of your concept. How much can your concept grow? Is it something that you'll probably have today and it's just going to have a full stop at it? Or is it something that can go on to something else, can push you on to a newer concept? Is there scope for growth within that concept itself? And the third one would be, is this commercially viable? So if you are looking at a business, it has to make business sense as well. So for me, the challenges were more about the business aspect of it, because I didn't have a background in business. So it became more of understanding what are, studying the market. So things that I didn't really think I would have to be doing, I was doing them now. And so, yeah, but you do understand that a lot of times people aren't aware of what they want themselves until you actually put out a product for them, to solve that need. So it was a lot of my research was also then directed towards understanding how do people react to a certain product. So I did a bunch of tests and exhibitions to figure out what is the pulse of the market, and then I launched in a larger, bigger way. So yeah, I mean, I think it's important to start. If you have an idea and if you have a concept that's so solid, then it is important to start off, and then you will have to bring in some sort of understanding. It's a great thing to actually collaborate with someone who can guide you through that process of how to make it a business venture. But yeah, I think when I started, I just had like this one thing in mind. It's a quote that I had read, and I really think it makes a lot of impact. So it's called, you can edit a bad page, but you can't edit a blank page. So you got to start. So I would say that is the most important thing. And the other thing that people usually don't talk about is your mindset. Being a researcher is very different from being a business person. If you're a business owner, you need to have a very different mindset. So I worked on something called subconscious reprogramming, which I teach as well. So this is completely to do with how do you train your mind to start thinking for success. And these aren't things that you will really, someone isn't going to come and tell you all this, but you realize over time that it is so important to have that mindset. I feel like most research-based students, people who are doing researchers really don't have that mindset of, I want to market this, right? We're very like, is this good enough, right? So I think that's very important to have that confidence and to reprogram your mind to think for that scale of success as well.
Right, Sanah. So, Keerti and Nitin, I understand that research has been part and parcel of your branding and marketing and running the company. So, can you throw some light on, how research has helped you in that aspect as well?
Sure. So the research that we are working with is actually thousands of years old, right? Craft there are over 3,000 types of crafts in India, and over 14,000 subcategories of those crafts. And everything is actually pretty well documented by craft institutes that do a lot of research work, including government bodies that do a lot of research work and craft documentation. Most of these are close to extinction because they've not been able to make a profitable business model out of that craft, or it's dying because the patrons are no longer there, because many years ago it was basically royalty that used to buy craft. And now that we do not have that concept anymore, and the affluent people are buying imported products, the support that was there to something that was a lakh worth of a shawl that was hand woven for a year is no longer present. So the challenge we had was that you had these amazing pieces of research and history, and you had to make sure that there would be a sustainable long-term sort of market for it, right? And I think what we did, and maybe there is something to learn over there, is that we use design as our core skill to glamorize the product, right? Something that was done only ever in red, blue, green, and yellow, which are the primary colors that artisans in rural India understand because they've never seen an onion pink. So we had to change all of that history to blend it with a very contemporary outlook, silhouettes that would appeal to a modern audience, right? So the first thing was definitely we had to glamorize all of that ancient research that existed. The second thing was to use it as a tool in marketing, right? Because when there are numbers and there is novelty in a fact that you're sharing, customers pay a lot of attention to it, right? So if there is bamboo fabric, that is something that's new to them. If they don't understand it and they don't understand what is the manufacturing process, and if you can add research numbers to how many liters of water it uses lesser than pure cotton, you are backing your marketing with numbers. And that has a very powerful impact on the customers. So I think that is something that has also helped us quite a lot. When it comes to processes and embedding sustainability, honestly, we tend to look for research that has been done by others. Like, for example, we would at no point be somebody who's really fantastic at compostable packaging, right? So we looked at people who had done the research, planted something in a package that had been used to deliver a product, and then seen if the tomatoes grow or not. And so we obviously went with the company that could provide us that kind of packaging. But these are the ways in which we've used research and sustainability. And I think it's an extremely powerful tool for a regular business, even if it's not based on research.
Thank you, Kit. Nitin, you want to add your aspects to the food aspect to this thing?
Yes, so I must tell you, I'll talk about a little bit about my background while studying commerce and sorry, just one. Sorry. I was saying, just didn't want the phone to disturb us. While doing commerce in college, it's not trying to demean the education system, but research was just the least important aspect of a commerce degree in India, which is quite unfortunate. I was happy because I didn't have to do research, because research always seemed like like a subject which took a lot of pain, right, to even pass through. And I must be honest, I think there was a subject which I really struggled with in my third year. But I didn't know when I went to my MS course, research was all that I'm supposed to be doing, right? So that was a rude shock for me. And I think a turning point also in my life, because I realized that research only can kind of drive innovation in many ways, right? That was the basis of any innovation, any progress that has to be made, whether it is business or not. And if I look at it now, everything that we do today, and I'll take you through that chain in a bit, everything that we do today is data and research based. Food and chocolate might seem simplistic. Well, at the high level, maybe it is, but if you want to move forward, if you want to go ahead, the only way you can do that is if you dive deep into research, and then data becomes very critical when you're diving deep into research, right? So for us at Coco Trade, we also run an institute where we teach people how to make chocolates. It's called Coco Shala, and it's based in Chennai. Now, of course, we're online, but every day we're literally unlearning and learning something new. And the chocolate business itself is quite interesting, because what we end up doing is we work with farmers at the farm, at the cocoa farm. So there's research being done at the farm when it comes to post-harvesting, maintaining temperatures of every fermentation batch, maintaining drying temperatures, and then correlating each of them to find out what the impact of that is on flavor. And when that comes to us, then there's this whole science of roasting, where you roast beans to get the best flavor out. Again, there's a lot of research that goes into it. Also because we're dealing with an agricultural product which changes from season to season, batch to batch, and those variations exist. And then we have to tie it up with the final flavor pairing, which has to be done at the end, which is when you're making or processing the chocolate. So in the process, I think we've completely deep dived into research. And when I sit back, sometimes I'm like, listen, are we a research company or are we chocolate company? Because that's the kind of discoveries we make every day. And I think it's never enough. Fortunately for us, we didn't come with a baggage. So maybe that is something that is working well for us. But in the process, we've also conceptualized and developed a model which is called the Coco Trade product development model, which we now deploy for our clients, where we're looking at science in a way. So flavor molecules that exist in cacao and this new flavor that you're supposed to be pairing it with, what are the matches, what are the things that don't match together and stuff. So that one part of it is kind of monetized, other than making a product and selling a product. But otherwise, I think, we're now very close to calling ourselves a research company more than a chocolate company. And we now feel that because you have the approach, now chocolate is just, just happens to be a product. Now we could apply this research and this approach to a lot of food products and maybe achieve a little bit, success even there. And I think the most important part for us while marketing this research that we do is we tell people that, listen, as a brand, today, we've saved 150 kgs of single-use plastic from entering landfills. To us, that I think is our measure of success, whether it's internally or whether it's talking to anybody else about it. But I think all of that is only possible because it was research-led and research-oriented. And I think I can't speak, enough about how important those aspects are and how we've been benefited by that approach, which I had no clue would turn out this way when we started off.
Right. So thank you, Nitin, for that. I have a general question for anybody who wants to pick it up. And, as Sanah mentioned that being from a research and an academic background, we don't always put on a management hat or a business hat and try to see from various perspectives. But you guys have, successfully wore a lot of hats at the same time and have tried to run a business as, grounded in research. So how difficult has been to manage it? Like all of you have done different things about, like different hats have you worn. So how difficult is it, or where does the focus go when you're wearing one hat or another hat? How do you merge these two together? So if somebody can put some light on that. Yeah.
I could go if I have a chance to talk before
yeah,
the
yeah. Go ahead Nitin. Yeah.
So this word difficult, right, to me scares me, because that's how I used to approach things when we started out, and I reached nowhere, to be very honest. If we think anything is difficult, it ends up being difficult. Unfortunately, that's how it works for us. So we have a very casual approach towards any large problem. And I think when I say casual approach, I mean an approach which is not kind of stressing you out. So we say, listen, there's a problem. Of course, there's a problem, and that has to be solved. So let's look at it in a very different way, but lead it by research, lead it by data. If you're approaching it by data, I think there is no problem that is difficult to solve. And then that's only a mental state of mind, because things get so clear with some research that you've done and with some data that leads you to some conclusions that no problem is difficult. That's what we've seen. And, 5 years ago, I would not have spoken the way I'm doing now. And I think it's just personal experience, that's why I can say that with so much of conviction. So I think nothing is difficult if you don't want it to be.
Okay. Thank you, Nitin. Sanah, you wanted to say something?
Yes. So a lot of times we get carried away in the process of researching something, right? Where you don't realize, how much is enough? Where do I put a break on this and actually start to convert this into a product, which I can then put out in the market, right? So I follow something called a divergent to convergent approach, which is very helpful for anyone who's listening in. This is a great tool that you can use. So when you start up on a concept, whatever it is that you are researching on, have a completely divergent approach where you are researching every possible aspect of it. From what you have, you do something called a mind map, right? So you do a lot of various permutations and combinations, test out all of that, and then start converging into things that okay, are sitting well right now in this frame, and freeze in on that and hit a full stop for that moment. Like for that phase, you need to stop there, and then you need to start working on product development after that. After you've done that, once you have a product, once you've tested it, once it's out and all of that, it's now time to jump to the next thing. So there's something that we call jumping to the next curve. So before what you have made becomes obsolete in the market, you need to start working on the next better idea. So that's where you need to sort of compartmentalize what you need to do at what point of time in that in that frame of what you're making. So yeah, that's just a helpful tip that I had to share. And another good thing is that I'm a designer. I did 4 years of fashion design, and I'm a BA honors. I didn't study any further. I just kept researching. I don't think education is. I don't need a degree to do what I want to do. I don't believe in that. So what I did was I took a concept in physics. I still study physics for fun, and I know that I may not have the kind of knowledge that IITians have, obviously, but no one around me ever thought that let's merge physics to fashion, right? I mean, it's just people think that what have they got to do with each other? And that's so wrong. Everything in our world is interconnected. So research can do those wonders. It can connect those dots, and it can create something new. So what I would suggest is start looking at interdisciplinary concepts, because they are so fun to research. That's where the fun comes in. So yeah, I mean, I really encourage anyone who's trying to do something different. It really makes good business sense as well to be doing that, because you're catering to 2 different or 3 4 different um, you know um, subjects or areas of study. So yeah, that makes a lot of business sense as well.
So Rohit, to the part of your question about wearing many hats, I think I want to answer that bit, because that may be valuable to some people listening in. So when the company is small, you end up doing a lot of everything. You're doing the marketing, you're in the photographs, you're also taking the photographs. It's almost everything. Um, but now, as Oka is much larger, what really helps me divide my time is to schedule it across the year, across the month, and across the week. So having a theme for a month, like for example, April is raw materials for us, right? So we will plan our raw material for the entire year, and that means that team has my undivided attention. And I know that I don't have to sell, I don't have to market too much. I'm not even doing many panels this month. So we've only focused on fabric. When it comes to weekdays, we know that Monday is long-term strategy and revising and course correcting that strategy. And we know that Tuesday is again artisan groups, right? So focus on the artisans and question everything on that. So Friday is customers, right? So we listen in and we talk about our customers. When you set the themes and structure your calendar according to your business themes, it may sound really small and trivial, but many companies don't do this very well. Largest companies I've worked with don't do this very well. And that tends to divert the leadership attention in many different places. And this just puts in a method to the madness and helps you have equal time and wear each hat.
Interesting. Thank you for the insight, Keerti. So my next question also is directed to Keerti, but we will open it up to the other panelists as well. So Keerti, as you said, you are using research as a tool for marketing and everything. But also what the general perspective is, that research is not visible. It is in the background, but the end thing is what you see. But the research that goes behind it is not something that is, pretty evident. Uh, how do you, does that make the entire thing worth the effort to produce the last thing, or do you like integrate research or something in the products itself, which you can share?
Right. So I'll take an example of indigo. It's a natural dye and it is used to dye blue colored fabric. Um, there is a ton of research on different types of indigos and different techniques of printing using indigo. So when we are at a design stage, we're obviously using all of that research. When we go into a garment stage, it's the textile bit of research is on the back burner. But when we go on to selling it, when we do the shoots and how we name the collection and how we write the product descriptions, these are small things that use that content again. something as simple as posting an Instagram story and making sure that right next to your indigo dress is the tank of indigo, and you should be able to tell people that this tank has been alive for 100 years, and that pot of indigo has passed down from generation after generation in a city called Jaipur, and where they are placed and how they brought this indigo from a village close by. I think those stories will share the research in a very different format, and storytelling in marketing is way too powerful and visuals are way too powerful. If I just wrote this content and did not share images, people will probably not consume it. So it's also very important to make sure that all of that research has a visual element to it and a human element to it. It doesn't require me to tell anyone the artisan's story while I'm talking about indigo, but they will pay attention to that story and also consume the indigo research.
Right. So any of the other panelists, Nitin, Sanah, you want to add your opinions to this thing?
Yeah, so I completely agree with what Keerti has been talking about, because that's a huge part of what we do as well. So every tag that goes out carries the name of the maker, because in the fashion business it's a lot of glamour and a lot less about the process. So informing people about that process acts as both a marketing, really good marketing strategy, but you're also really doing good, right? You're giving due credit to the people who are involved. So that makes for a great marketing strategy. Another thing that I wanted to point out is that you can be really smart about how you're telling your story. So when you do have a research in hand, you can magnify that and you can break it up into a lot of pieces where you can name each of them as individual concepts as well. So with planar flux, we had one aspect of it where the design itself was zero waste. And the other aspect was that we were now testing this for human kinetics. We were doing a bunch of other things. Now we have something that we're working on, which is a JIT manufacturing system, which is a just-in-time manufacturing system, right? So these are things that were offshoots of that original concept, and they become really great stories on their own as well. So we named our research and development wing HI. It's called Human Intelligence. Okay, and the reason it's called HI is also because the main cut that we make on the fabric is in the shape of an H and I. So you can use what you already have, and you can spin it up in a really fascinating, interesting way to tell a story that gets the person curious, that I want to know more about this. So marketing is all about how much of that curiosity can you create and how much can you keep them engaged to keep coming back to you.
So, our experience over the last few years has been people don't buy products, they buy stories before they buy the product. So for us, though we've not been hugely successful in showcasing our stories, the way Sanah or Keerti has been talking about, and I think that's an area for improvement for us. But what we are convinced about is that definitely people buy, stories before the product. Now, maybe the resale doesn't happen or the guy doesn't come back for the next time, but for most brands to survive, the first sale is very critical, right? So the storytelling has to be an integral part of the entire equation. And one of the earlier things Sanah had mentioned, I think one or two conversations earlier, was in different words maybe, but what it meant to us and something we believe in is supply drives demand. And sometimes you have a great story, it's fantastic, it works, but the fact is, just because the product now exists in front of the customer, he's going to buy it. So I think we have to bring both together. And when it comes to what we've done a little bit about, researching and then tailoring a story based on the insights that we got from the research, is we've just recently come up with a Madras collection and a spice collection. The Madras collection, Sanah has been a part of as well, where we realized that people, when they buy chocolates, which is a very impulsive product, also need more reasons to choose your product over the other. Price not always is the driver. In traditional marketing sense, maybe price is always very critical, but in the business we are in, price is not always the driver. There are other things that you have to associate, and all of that came out of research. And I think putting that research into marketing, has been the way. And I think it will be the way for most corporates or startups as they go along.
So, Rohit, if I may add to this conversation, I think there is a point to note that these two are very good researchers who are good marketeers, right? And a lot of people watching this may also feel that if they have a great research piece or a product and they're not able to take it to market, I think a great way is to find a marketing co-founder, because if they are convinced of your research, that team will be a match made in heaven. I think, and they are always looking out for such opportunities, and it's so difficult to find two people who would have complementary skills. But this would mean a lot if they can find one.
Right, that absolutely makes a lot of sense, Keerti. So that is what brings me to my next question. And we'll start with Keerti. You said that your April month is raw material months, and then you have designed it that way. So I'm coming to the point of supply chain. In the supply chain, for you it might be what kind of a raw material. For Nitin, it might be what kind of a cocoa beans and stuff, and Sanah, it might be where to get the source of the fabrics. How do you, is there any research involved in that, and if it is there, how does it streamline with the process of the final product, and how important is it for that thing?
So it may seem so simple to make a dress, right? But there is so much research that goes on to selecting a fabric for a certain type of dress. There's literally a science behind it. And every single seam, every single weave, your garment is going to fall completely differently, right? And people who work in this field are experts of it, including master Gs who are like pros at really understanding every single seam that we don't even understand. So definitely, I think it starts at textile. Everything starts at textile for us. But sometimes it can start at a garment level, and then you look for the textile for it, or you design the textile for that particular fabric. Of course, you're going to make sure that in the supply chain, there are many other nicks and knacks that go into the garment. And, as we try to build sustainability in those things as well. So, for example, we just stopped using plastic buttons and we started using coconut buttons or metal buttons, or we're trying to avoid zips because they are plastic, or we're trying to avoid elastic because that's plastic, and that prevents you from actually recycling your product. And there is no other alternative. So you cannot buy plastic free undergarments in India because it has to have plastic. And there are so many people who are trying to find a solution to this problem, and there isn't one. So if anybody wants to research this, it's a huge, huge scope for a market that's there and for a solution that doesn't exist. Once we, of course, cross, the construction and the sampling stage, production itself requires you to understand, really how you should produce it. Should it be a line, or should it be one garment per person? Because there are certain garments, if they are made fully by one person, they will turn out a lot better. But there are some daily wear garments, pants and shirts, for example, men's shirts. Men's shirts turn out very well because there is a tailoring unit that has specialization. One person is very good at making the collar, and the other person is really good at putting the buttons. But that doesn't work for ties, or that doesn't work for pants, or that doesn't work for a different kind of garment. So there is immense amount of knowledge. I wouldn't even call it research. I think it's just knowledge in the industry that's there. But the main research that is being done is actually embedding technology in fashion, which is far from there, because there are far few people even looking at it seriously. Like Sanah said, people are still using the same techniques that were used hundreds of years ago to still make garments. And I think that particular gap is there in our supply chain. There are no softwares to manage your inventory. I'm telling you, the largest organizations are still using Excel sheets at having 5,000 SKUs. When you have 5,000 products, I have seen companies still using Excel sheets. because it's a complicated process. If it's just data, you will not understand. You need to have the photograph. Some solutions will give you very good visual tools, and some will give you very good Excel formats, and you cannot club the two. So designers are still using normal PowerPoint presentations and Excel sheets to manage their business. It's that limited. And so hence, I think there are huge amounts of gaps, while there are certain researches. On e-commerce front, I think there has been a lot of work that has been done by the giants, and hence, something as simple as making sure that CODs are not returned from the door, or your packaging can be reused, or especially your internal business packaging can be reused. I think these are processes that on the e-com front are quite advanced, especially understanding consumer data. Myntra, for example, does not have designers anymore because they know that red is selling really well and V-neck is selling really well. So they just make a red V-neck t-shirt and that's it. And they make like crores of rupees just by making that t-shirt. So there are many companies that are actually only studying consumer data and behavior and designing according to that. We do a lot of that as well because we study our own data very actively and design for the customer rather than designing for ourselves. But I think it does limit the possibilities of design.
Sanah, you want to go ahead and then we'll come to Nitin?
Yes, of course. So I think what's different in the kind of processes that Okai has and what I do is basically to do with the process of design. So what Okai follows is what the traditional norms are, okay, and they work fantastically well, which is why Okai is doing so well as well. Now, what I do is a very risky affair because I don't design the product, I design the process. So I don't even know when I'm making a new piece or I'm researching something and I'm developing a new piece as such. So every planar flux garment is an original. There's no such thing in the world before. So how do you create an original piece? How do you keep creating original pieces, right? So that's where the challenge is for me. How much time can I devote to just that process of developing newer products and managing the business aspect as well? So what we do is, in a typical design firm, you have designers who will create sketches or tech packs is what we call them, about what's your silhouette going to look like, and then you either already have your textile ready, or you then get a source of textile that's perfectly going to match that design. So they know the end product before it's even going to be made. With my methods, I don't know what the end product is when I'm creating something new. So I design sort of the foundations or the patterns, as we call it. And so it's more like magic. If it comes out really great. So I think the challenge for me has always been that how do you create a successful piece every time? So when you are designing the foundation, so let me put it in a perspective that you can understand. So let's say, like in architecture, you have blueprints, right? You have basically the blueprints of the building. So typical design processes in fashion will design the outer look of the building, not the blueprint. Okay, I design the blueprints. Okay, so I'm designing a new process every time that a new product is made. So from there, we move on to, okay, now we have this product, and now how do we get the right fabric for it? So we don't create our own materials, we source them. And it has been a big challenge to, because we are not making things at a mass production scale. So sourcing fabrics is a very, very big roadblock for us because we don't want to source tons and tons of material. So it becomes quite difficult to especially source sustainable options. But yeah, we have found partners now, and we're getting like GRS, which is Global Recycled Standard Materials. We're getting a lot of GOTS cotton, things like that. So there is, it's more like, when you are in that box of this is my constraint and I need to work with it, you kind of come up with innovative ways to figure it out as well. So as much as it is hard and it is tough, it's also, in the back of your mind, that I'm going to figure this out in a really interesting way. So for most part of any business which is research based, it is going to be about how feasible is it to convert it into a product. Okay, and how am I going to source the raw material, everything, the entire supply chain coming together is what becomes a big challenge. So it is more of a hit and trial. You got to keep working at it to figure it out. And it's a really good thing to co-create. So if you're not doing it just by yourself, if you have someone that you're doing it with who's handling a certain part of the work, it makes a lot of sense.
So Nitin, you want to add your perspective to this?
Yeah, so I think, as we mentioned earlier, research, I think, forms basis of a lot of what we do also. But we are in a very interesting supply chain, scenario where the beginning of the chain, which is at the farm for us with the cocoa farmers, has very little research done. So the inordinate amount of time we spend on doing that research, which also is seasonal, and for information, now is cocoa season. So the 4-5 months of this time of the year is a lot of research being done at that stage. And then when the beans are ready to make chocolate, through the year, that part research is already kind of established, because chocolate making as a science has been researched for several years. So we're in a situation where the first half needs a lot of research, but the mid portion of our processing, we rely on a lot of research that has already been done, and there's very little scope to improve there because a lot has been done already. But the final part, which is ensuring that the consumer gets the product in the right shape, and at the right phase of the purchase, is where again a lot of research needs to happen. So we're focusing on the two ends of the research, where we work with farmers. Again, very, very rewarding, but there have been challenges like, how do you get hardware to couple with firmware and software to work together, and you monitoring things remotely. This year has been phenomenal for us. I'm on this call where I'm in Chennai, whereas the farms in Andhra and Karnataka, for instance, have OTT-based, IoT-based devices installed, and I'm able to monitor stuff from here. So a lot of research there was a challenge until now, but I think this year has been a quantum leap for us, where we're able to outsource a little bit of that technology at the farm to the farmer, so that we can just look at the data and make some decisions from here remotely. The interesting part is the final part, where not just making the product sustainable, but also the physical supply chain of reaching the product to the customer had to be researched. And that's our goal for this season. In fact, as we talk again, because we are here in our home base, we're able to do that research. We've actually coincidentally tied up with a company which has been incubated by IIT Madras that helps us insulating, our chocolates before it reaches. So they have expertise in various other products like medicines, critical care medicines and stuff, but and even life-saving medicines. But chocolate is a little different game for them. So the way we are working it out is we have sensors installed inside the boxes, and we recreate a Blue Dart shipment, for example, right? And we use that data, which we are monitoring constantly, live, real-time basis, to see how the moisture and the temperature inside the box has reacted, to the situation while it's being delivered to the customer. So I think challenges are perhaps there, but one learning which I feel, and I've seen little amount of success with that approach, is that we shouldn't expect research to solve a problem overnight. And this is a little bit of both Sanah and Keerti talking as well, where it is a process, and research itself shouldn't be looked at as a magic wand to solve all your problems. And what we realized in the last 5 years is most times for us, research tells us what not to do rather than what to do. And that's very valuable. That's very valuable because you're saving amazing amount of very, very precious time, effort, and money by not doing certain things which might not get you anywhere. And then focusing on things that probably are going to be more useful. But research, again, when you marry it with business, you always have to choose, right? Saying, Are you a research company? Are you a company that's out there to make money and make use of the research? So somewhere I think the challenge is overall how to marry both and make sure that you're profitable as a business going forward. But I mean, obviously, a very interesting phase.
Yeah, so that brings to my last question, and I'll throw this to Sanah, and then we'll open it up to the others. When you go for funding for any company, right, it is more like the vision of the company, right? When you are projecting your vision as a sustainable and a brand and a research-oriented brand, do you say that, I am a research company? Or do you say that, I am a sustainable company? Or do you say that, I'm a new age company? Like, how do you get the funding for these sort of a company, and what are the challenges you would face when you go for funding a research based company?
Firstly, I think we are three different business owners here, and we all have research as an intrinsic part. And I feel like every business out there does research, whether they know it consciously or not. They are doing research. You have to base your next product on something, right? So you already have research, you are doing it, you may not be aware of it. So what we do is we project ourselves as an innovation led company, which is creating innovation with high sustainability index. So that encompasses all these aspects that we already want to talk about. And I think there is this huge misconception with research, which is you need to have a lot of money to do it. I don't think that's true. I didn't do it that way. My research right now is at a stage where I will be taking it for funding for investors, but I didn't start that way. You can decide what kind of research you need to do. Okay. So I feel like you can have 10,000 rupees or you can have 10 million. Okay. So that's completely up to how do you want to structure it? What is it that you want to make? So I created a technique of design, and I really didn't need any external support to do that. I just needed a pair of scissors and fabric. So it can be as simple as that. You can make it as simple as that. Test out everything before you're actually going to a level of getting external funding. So I would say that till you have done enough research on the possibilities of this going wrong, keep it to yourself. Keep it something that you're funding yourself, and it makes your business more robust and more polished before you can put it out there. So another thing that like I mentioned in the bio that you're reading out also, I always say that there are two things in the world that are the universal truth. These two things exist in all existence. That's design and science, right? So this is in everything all around us, in the DNA structures, in the way that smaller masses orbit larger masses, everything, right? But in our world there is a third concept, and that's money. So it's a very important part of whatever research you're doing needs to make monetary sense. So now I'll give you a very simple example of a challenge, because we were having that conversation earlier. The pandemic was a huge challenge, right? And as a research-based brand, as people who are making innovative garments, you already know that you're catering to a niche. Okay, and now when you're hit with something like a pandemic, you have no, your fabrics aren't going to come in. There's no supply, right? You don't have, obviously, you're not going to be able to cater to orders as well. And what do you do in a phase like that, right? So I didn't want to just shut down my business, because that's not what I was here for. So I came up with this concept of upcycling. It's zero raw material cost for me, because people donated their saris. So we took saris that people had and were not using. They were in perfectly good shape, but were just not being used. So think of grandmothers and mothers who've been collecting and having these beautiful saris, and they're just lying in a trunk. So we started sourcing them, and we had zero raw material cost because it was a sari, and we didn't want to invest in the whole system of creating patterns for these garments, because that's another investment that goes in. That's a lot of brain work that goes into it. So we came up with this really artistic way of doing it, where I would do this myself. I still do. So I turn on a piece of music that I feel relates to that sari, and I cut without any drawing on the garment. There's nothing. It's just the scissor and the fabric that are having their conversation, and I'm just the enabler. And it may seem really random, but there is no such thing as randomness, is what I have discovered through this process. We had such beautiful garments coming out of these pieces, and we had, once things opened up, we had so much demand for these products. We had people from San Francisco buying them, and it was so exciting to see that, you know, it's getting a new life, firstly, and you just crafted something out of someone's, you know, something that was lying in someone's trunk, just unused. So research can also, you know, your concepts can also be innovative based on the circumstances that you're in, and that several times pushes you to do things that you probably never thought you would.
Yeah. So, Keerti, can we go ahead next? An add-on to that question is, you know, having a parent having a parent corporate supporting or something. How does that make it a different thing? Or, you know, has being in the top 130 women, has that helped in the funding part, or, you know, any marketing part or stuff like that?
So I'll start with saying that when you decide to get an investor for your business, it's like hiring a boss. And you know what kind of person you want, right? And I think that's such a critical part of that person is going to become a critical part of your life and your business, and their vision is going to be a critical part of your business. It's really important to match ethos, right? What is your vision and ethos? Because honestly, as of now, there is plenty of funding in the market, right? Because everyone has realized how well investors have done in the last few years, and everyone wants to invest in startups as opposed to investing in the stock market. So in that scenario, you do have a choice. You do have the ability to select an investor who is very aligned with you and your company's ethos. Now, having said that, OKA is a non-profit organization, which means that it can attract CSR funds, right? So either corporate funds or somebody who is, an impact investor who is not looking for a return on investment, but is really looking at impact numbers. So here, they don't care about what product you make, as long as the artisans make a certain amount of money every year and the number of artisans you impact, right? That's the ethos of an impact investor or a CSR of a corporate, right? Now, of course, a large part of the responsibility is taken care of if you have somebody who is promised to be with you for a long run, right? And you don't have to go out there in the market every single 6 months and look for investors. And a large part of it is also taken care of if you're a customer funded organization, which Okai tended to be, right? Because from day one, we were selling like hotcakes. So our regular business is taken care of from that part, right? And if we do need to set up something new for the future, we will require external investment. So that balance is also really important, that at least your ops is running and it's going to run through your cash flow. And how your cash flow can also be structured is very important, right? What kind of working capital is required in your business? How fast is your turnover? Because the faster that is, the lesser external investment you're going to require. And as far as everyone is concerned, I think people are very clear. They do it when they are really ready for that market, and they need extra funds to change either consumer behavior. In those cases, you have to, like an Uber would have not been able to change the way we actually use cabs had there not been an external investment, or a Zomato or a Swiggy. These companies had to change consumer behaviors, and that requires immense amount of marketing. So I think that's really broadly what I want to say, is that you can look at all of these 5-6 elements to decide who you want. And if you can find someone long term that is very meaningful. And always be on the lookout. You may meet someone who you may not invest in you right now, but they'll observe you for a few years, and 3 years down the line, maybe they are the person to invest.
So Nitin?
Right. So, I must start with saying I'm normally a very and a eternally positive person, right? But when it comes to investment and my experiences, especially in the Indian market, and I must say, unfortunately, we're in India having this conversation and doing our business. It's a very different scenario here, because an investor, of course, brings in money. That's the first thing he needs to bring in to be even being qualified as an investor, right? So he brings in money, but he doesn't bring anything else usually, which could help your business move to the next level. Keerti just mentioned, wait and find the right person kind of thing. But what happens is, and you call it a boss, right? It's almost like hiring a boss, but I look at it slightly differently. I say it's almost like a marriage, So you have to live through that relationship with, one obviously dominating over the other in this case. But in a country like India, what we've seen is there is no specific fund that would focus its monies, and I'm happy to be proved wrong, that would be focusing its monies on investing only in research-based organizations. There is no dedicated fund. Now, every investor, might have some investments, but that focus dedication is not there. And until that happens, businesses that are research-based will never be valued. And the basic principle of research is you go by number. I mean, the basic principle of investment is you go by numbers, right? So if it's a research-based organizations, what are those numbers? You can show impact areas. You can have case studies, use cases to prove a lot of things. But eventually, the 1 crore that gets invested needs to become 5 crores for the investor, right? Now, that is going to be a challenge. As Keerti said, and even Sanah and myself, we are all in the consumer-facing business, fortunately, where there is a funding that happens by the consumer. It becomes slightly easier. Life becomes easier when that is the case. But otherwise, I think in this space, funding is even today, I would say, a problem in India. And I don't look at too many things as problems, to be honest. But I think I am forced to call this a problem, because it's a chicken and egg. And I don't think if we were having this conversation in San Francisco, it would have been very different, because you have people betting on technology, betting on the future, betting on research-based businesses quite a lot more easily, I guess, over there than it happens here. So here it's very difficult to convince an investor saying, listen, I'm research-based. I have certain things to prove to you, but listen, I need your money so that, with my existing business, I'm going to make it 5x. I think it's very difficult as of today. And I hope somebody is listening to this, who could change things. But certainly for me, I'm at the receiving end, at this stage, and I might sound very negative or slightly negative as far as this topic is concerned.
So that was all the questions I had prepared for the panelists. I have only one last thing to ask you, and if possible, we can take a few questions from the audience as well. So the final thing is, where do you see this sustainability and this research-oriented, the entire businesses going in the future? Like, do you think it is like a marketing gimmick right now because everybody's talking about climate change and it will go on to something else later on, or is it something that is there to stay? And how is your brand or company is going to be there in the next 5 years?
I don't mind taking this first because it's kind of fresh in my mind. Okay, so I don't think it's a fad. Normally it's a fad if it is some few businesses or brands coming up and showing or supplying something to the market. And then maybe it's being driven by that trend, where they're putting in marketing monies and advertising monies to influence consumers. But I think sustainability, and more so because of the pandemic, I think, has found the right voices. Now, imagine small things like the Prime Minister talking about sustainability and the need to be either Atmanirbhar or being local about vocal. All of that has a thread to sustainability also. You want to be Atmanirbhar because it's more sustainable. You want to be vocal about local because that drives sustainability to an extent. So I think when the voices come from that level, it's more than a fad. And we've seen it in our business that, consumers are becoming aware. So it's now not a situation where businesses are spending marketing money and trying to create a demand. That demand is being how do I put it? I mean, consumers are warming up to the fact that they need to look further. It can't be pretty looking packaging all the time. I would still perhaps make more than half my decision based on a pretty looking packaging on a shelf. But there are enough consumers now to make serious sense in business who look beyond that. And I think pandemic has driven it. So maybe a silver lining to the pandemic is that, but more than just the pandemic, it's the right voices at the right time, which I think is making sure that it's not a fad anymore. So when you talk sustainability to an audience, they're not laughing about it. 5 years down the line, 5 years before today, they were laughing about it. When you said you want to create a brand that is sustainable, want to save plastic, like, why are you doing this? What is the need? The investor would ask you, what does the business need to do? Because the consumer doesn't want it. So why are you creating this supply? So, but today I think things have changed. Pandemic, the prime minister, you could credit so many things. The fact is, I don't think it's a fad, and I think it's there to stay. So we have enough reason to think we'll be in this business for more than a few decades.
Do other panelists want to take anything up with this thing?
So, do you want to go? Go.
You go ahead. Yeah.
Okay. So when sustainability started becoming mainstream, and a lot of small businesses very easily adapted to it because it almost seemed natural to them, especially because they were small businesses, it's easier. Large companies, and I mean billion-dollar companies, also realized that sustainability on their strategy decks was the #1 trend. So what started to happen was that everyone started to create very quick solutions to sustainability in the large organizations, which very evidently started looking like greenwashing. And so right now what we have is a whole lot of small organizations, very sustainable, very honest, some large initiatives which are very honest, and some large organizations which are heavily involved in greenwashing and trying to imitate what the small organizations are doing. But I do see hope that this is almost like a first run by those large organizations, and many of them will be able to, in the due course of time, change their supply chain to actually become sustainable, and what they are marketing to be actually true. So I do see that this will become the way of doing business. It honestly was the way of doing business. It just we lost track trying to be profitable, and I think lost track of the planet. But it is going to be the way people do business in future. As far as Okai is concerned, I think definitely our first promise is to the artisans, and we want to impact a lack of artisans in the next few years, less than 3 years maybe. And we want to make sure that we do it sustainably, which means that it doesn't come at the cost of the planet.
Sanah, you want to go ahead? Yeah.
Yes. So to pick up on where Keerti left, in our world today, I would say sustainability has been catching up initially as a trend because it's now become fashionable. It's in vogue. Okay. I started my research 6 years ago. I'm 27 today. I was 21 when I started doing this work. And I had no clue what sustainability was. So now I'm armed with that knowledge. So I understand what it truly means. But I also understand that there are way too many challenges. And that's because of the way that our world is structured. And that has a lot to do with the affordability of sustainable goods. Okay, so a lot of people, I have been on a lot of panels and a lot of conversations, and a lot of people ask me this question, but I can't afford it. What do I do? So I have to be unsustainable because I can't afford sustainable products. And that is the bitter truth. It is a lot expensive to create those garments because of how much thought and how much how much effort goes into them, but also because the way that these textiles are procured, farmed, all of that is going to be a lot more expensive, right? So how are we going to solve this problem? There's a book that I would suggest everyone to read. It's called Oxygen Manifesto. It's by an Indian IAS officer, Atulya Mishra. So read that book, because that book answers this so brilliantly. It's majorly about how we need to overhaul our taxation policies, legislature, because till we do that, this is sweet talk that we can keep having, but it's not really going to change anything at a big massive level in the long run, because you're still going to have organizations like H&M, which is a fast fashion brand, which is going to keep claiming that it's getting sustainable while they are absolutely not. So another thing that I do want to point out is basically to do with why this whole conversation of sustainability right now, it is catching up just as I mean, it's not going to die out, but if we don't have enough people asking those questions and asking not about just that why is this sustainable. So I think it's a really sad thing that we need to put on our tags things like this was made fairly and ethically. I think that's really sad. Why should anything need to be tagged that? Isn't it understood that it should be made fairly and honestly, right? I think that we need to start having labels for this was not made ethically. That will change the system. I feel like that should become a policy. We need to put this out in legislature and policy that if you're not making it a certain way, you need to put it out there for the consumer to know. I think that no one wants to buy something and carry guilt with them, and that will change the way that we purchase. Instead of just having something that says it's made really well, you need to have things saying that no, this was not made really well. Do you still want to buy this?
So thank you, all the panelists. Those were the questions from my side. I do have a couple of questions. We will try to wrap it up by 3:30. The questions are general in nature, so anybody who wants to take it up can take it. So first question was, when we say sustainability, everybody connects it with carbon footprints and stuff like that. So when you're doing a lot of this research, do you keep a track of how much of a carbon footprint have you reduced, uh, or do you keep a track, like this is the savings that I've had from a carbon footprint point of view? The second question which we have is related to this thing. It is the impact on the society, like when you're having a sustainable supply chain. So how has that sustainability impacted the increase in the revenue for all the women in the village or in the cocoa production? Uh, do you check those statistics, or do you check those numbers and see whether your sustainability actually has impacted at the multiple level thing? So I would be happy to take any panelist.
Okay, so sustainability as a concept seems very overwhelming, that there's too much going on in this. So it's basically just consciousness. Are you conscious about what you're doing? Whether you're purchasing or whether you're manufacturing, are you conscious about what you're doing? Are you aware that this is having an impact elsewhere too? And I think any good business is when you can ask yourself this question, that am I able to positively impact someone that I don't even know yet? Can I impact a stranger somewhere else in a really positive way through my business? Okay, so that's one step closer to where you need to be. So within sustainability as a concept, we have four, you can break it down into four parts. You have social, you have environmental, you have cultural, and you have commercial. So only when all four of these tie down together, you have a truly sustainable model. So it doesn't mean that you need to start off with all of them. You can have one aspect and just completely work on that till you can gather enough expertise and knowledge to venture out into building the others into your business as well. So in terms of things like the impact that we have done, so we try to cover all these aspects within the business. So we work with NGOs as well. So I teach at NGOs. I teach women sewing, and so that they can get jobs. And so we also do something called an annual sustainability report, which as a small brand we don't see other people doing. And I know that it may not seem like, does it make really a big impact, but to us it does. So our previous report, we had 88% of our entire collection was zero waste. So that's a huge number to have as a zero waste thing, and the impact of that is magnanimous. So we are doing those things where we are putting down. So for every design that is made, the waste is calculated, and we have like a cutoff that you cannot have. We within the system do not have a waste beyond 5 to 6%. That's the maximum, and 88% of it has no wastage at all. So that gives us some motivation that, okay, now we need to inch in closer to 100. So it's important to have those stats in place and to know where you're headed. And we are doing that, and I think that Okai and Nitin both, they are doing that as well, from what I gather.
So carbon footprint, specifically on that, I don't think there are services that will very easily or in an inexpensive manner allow small businesses to calculate their carbon footprint. Please let me know if there is, because I haven't found one. So what we try and do is we try to go to the most extreme goal, because honestly, if you're going to do a zero waste goal, then you're going to be at, okay, 90% waste or 95% waste, right? But at least your goal is absolute and extreme, and all your processes are going to be designed to have an ambition that would be zero waste, right? When you look at, say, for example, transporting goods between all our locations, right? Now we have 3 offices, 2 warehouses, one workshop. Now things move between these offices and between designers and artisans. What we simply did was, all the bags that were going from all these locations, instead of using cardboard boxes, we converted them into suitcases with a zip, which we made out of waste as well. Now these suitcases are being moved from one place to another, and hence we do not need any more packaging again and again, right? They last us almost more than a year. So point being that we know that here we've reduced our carbon footprint. It's definitely not increased in this case. Of course, you will account for the weight of the suitcase, and you will account for all of those things. It's common sense. Now, I think as far as looking at people aspect, that data is available at a very granular level, because you're paying everybody in their bank accounts. And as long as you're not issuing out any cash, every business will have this data in a very, very refined manner to be able to analyze and to be able to transparently share. So many times on our Instagram page, people will ask us, so how much did the artisan make for this product? And we are able to open our files and share the exact value for that particular product with our customers. And that ends up actually giving them the confidence to purchase that product. So while you have the data, how transparent are you willing to be with that data is also very important. And I think these are some ways in which we are able to track and ensure that we are honest to those goals.
Just wanted to answer, Keerti. There are organizations that build softwares for life cycle impacts. Yeah. And to anyone who's watching this, we don't have really, I haven't known of anyone in India doing this for at least the fashion business. So I know of companies abroad, and we have it as something on our list to have incorporated within our company. But it's expensive, and so it needs a lot of planning, which is why we are stalling it, deferring it a little bit. So yeah, if there's anyone who's interested in this, there is a lot of scope for building something that is, economic and can calculate life cycle impact of products.
Yeah. So Rohit, my perspective, we as Keerti and Sanah mentioned, and I completely agree that it's difficult and expensive to calculate the carbon footprint or the carbon impact that your business or your efforts have. So what we've done is, but we had to measure, right? Unless you measure, you're not motivated. Unless you measure, you don't have a goal. Unless you measure, you don't move forward. So for us, it's been rather simplistic. We've said, okay, how many kgs of single-use plastic can you save for the customer, right? To us, that of course can always be extrapolated to carbon saving and all of that, but we don't go into that detail yet, because we know if we achieve this, we would anyways be achieving, carbon positivity or neutrality, or, at least somewhere we would achieve a lot of brownie points there. But for us, measuring that impact of single-use plastic, I think has helped us in more ways than one. It has helped us internally, because we say, how do we calculate our sales? Not by the number of chocolate bars we've sold, or not by the number of kgs we've processed. It's simply by the number of single-use plastic kilos that we have saved for the planet, right?